Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Criminal Justice Insider. I'm BABZ RAWLS-IVY. This is Criminal Justice Insider with BABZ RAWLS-IVY and Jeff Grant. Jeff is not here today, but he'll be back soon. And our guest today is Kennard Ray. Oh, and let me also tell you, this show is sponsored by the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven.
Woo-hoo.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever.
All right. Hey, Kennard.
Good morning, Babs. Hey.
So Kennard reminded me that he met me at the Electric Drum like a few years back.
I think probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh my God, has it been that long?
Yeah.
You must have been 12.
Close. 12 going on 35.
Oh, all right. So let's get right to it, Kennard, before I even run down your list of accomplishments. So you got caught up in a firestorm a few years back.
I did.
And it became national conversation.
Yeah. I think it sparked a great conversation to be had.
It did.
Absolutely.
And that's a wonderful thing to have your name attached to. What does second chance mean? And how do we, you committed a crime or something.
Sure.
You served some time.
Sure.
A decade ago.
Yep.
And then you went, got a job.
I did.
Did not say that you had this on your record.
That feels so much warmer. Can you hear the difference in my voice? Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Harry.
And then it gets found out, and it creates this whole discussion about checking the box, background checks.
Right.
When do you do them?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you reveal? When do you reveal?
Right.
Talk to me about that, Kennard.
Sure. So I'll take you back to that time, 2013. Late 2013, I had been tapped by Hartford's mayor to serve as his deputy chief of staff.
That's Segura, right? Segura?
Yes, Segura at the time.
Uh-huh.
And so in the process, in the appointment process, I had not filled out a job application. I wasn't looking for a job, right? So being brought on by the administration as an appointee, that's actually one of the last things they think about doing before they make the announcement that they've hired you is to check your background. Hartford had already passed prior to my event a ban-the-box, a local ban-the-box provision for public jobs. So had they conducted a background check, say, a couple weeks earlier before I accepted the job, they would have been at the point where they could have asked about my history.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, and as many people know, the way many ban-the-box provisions or laws work is the employer cannot ask the question about your background until a provisional offer or conditional offer is made of employment. So the way that the law is set up in most places and the way that it was in Hartford at that time was we make an offer, then we can ask. Mm-hmm. What they did instead, though, is they made an offer, they hired, and then the Hartford Current called up and said, hey, this guy that you hired, we think he has some history you should look into. Here's what we've seen, right? Here's what's there. And so this is the day before I start because I think politically it was more important for that administration to say, hey, we've hired this really great local community-based political person, and we want to get the word out there. So they hadn't conducted a background check. That wasn't even an interest to them. And once the Current ran their own check, that administration freezed up. I think they were stuck on how to respond to it.
So what was in your background check? What happened?
No. So
because I'm trying to understand, like, you didn't rob a bank, did you?
No. But if I would have robbed a bank, I don't think it would have had anything to do with being the person that was politically in charge of the mayor's affairs, right? Like, so there are people who rob banks. There are people who commit crimes that probably should not work in a bank. But I wasn't looking to work in a bank. Actually, I wasn't looking for the job in the first place. So I think that's what created space and flexibility for me to stand out and speak up.
Okay.
And so.
So did the Current call you and say, listen, we're going to go with this?
Nah, the current actually called the chief of staff at the time. And then the chief of staff called me the day before starting work, like hours before starting work, and I was standing next to Senator Blumenthal, and it's when your heart drops a little bit into your stomach,
Yeah.
and when you speak up on the other line, you know what's coming on. And so the question was, hey, is this stuff true? And I said, absolutely. I told you to look at it, right? And so I've never had a problem discussing or revealing my history
So what is your
and
history?
relevant. So yeah, and here's what's fun about it, because
this is the key. This is the thing that got the discussion going and everybody talking about this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a part of what got people talking about it. Not so much what was in the history, but I'll reveal that to you right now, and I actually have it in full because I got my arrest and conviction report back from the state a couple of days ago because I'm applying for a pardon. So I have 2 convictions for gun possession, and I have 2 convictions for drug sales.
Okay.
So
and how old were you?
First conviction, this is 1997, so I was 16.
Oh my God.
And the last one was 2003. I was 22.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm 37 now, and at the time of the incident or the event with Mayor Segarra and that administration, I think I was, if that was 2013, I was 32.
Okay.
So it was it was a decade. It was a decade. It was a decade. It was a decade.
You're a different person. You're grown up.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, if we pay attention at all to how systems work, first, as you said, Babs, I was grown up, so my brain hadn't fully matured through any of that stuff that I had done between 97 and 2000.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, 97 and 2002, right? Like, so this is still a kid coming out of off mom's front porch, going into the wild worlds that have already been created for us.
You're a black guy.
Exactly.
And you're in a city environment.
Yes.
And all the stuff that goes on in these communities.
Exactly.
I don't know anybody who hasn't got caught up.
Exactly.
I personally don't.
Exactly. And neither do I. Right. I grew up on a very small street. I think total probably 30 households. Or not 30 households, but 33 family houses, something like that. And all the little boys that I grew up with all met their fate either in jails, institutions, or the graveyard at some point in time. And so we know that through that pattern, if we just took that street as a microcosm or as a case study, a sample for the overall criminal justice landscape for black persons in this country, we know that it's not the people that are wrong, it's the systems that are wrong, right?
Because how long are you supposed to pay for this? And why is it prohibitive for you to have the kind of life that a grown-up should have?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? If you ask the Hartford Courant, or
they don't ever want you to have a job,
right? Although that is completely contrary to the stipulations that are put on people when they come out of these institutions. If you make it out of prison and you're on parole, the expectation, although false, is for you to get a job in 30 days, even though 30, 60, 90 days, no matter what it is not enough time for someone who very likely came out of prison with less skills than they had when they went in.
Yes.
Right? So, and with less opportunity than you had when you went in, because before you went in, you didn't have the F.
And if you were a kid when you went in,
exactly,
and you come out a kid,
exactly,
the deciding factor is you're a kid.
Right. So there's nothing that's made you more qualified. Actually, you're in most cases less qualified. And if it's taking the people who you live in a home with, your mother, your father, your grandmother, whoever it might be, when you're that kid that goes into these systems, if it takes them a lifetime to find work or right. So you, the one who goes in, gets the felony, comes out, you're supposed to have a better option or a better opportunity at a job that's completely outside the scope of any reality that I know. But we know that our systems are built in very unrealistic ways. They don't respond to what people actually face and live. So without jumping too far ahead, I mean, my work today is to move us systemically, our policies more towards a realistic lived experience versus the pie in the sky idealism that we get from the criminal justice system today.
So what would you have liked to have seen happen? Like if Hartford would have been a little bit more progressive, they could have. I think they overreact personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think they overreact, and I think they could have made this into a plus if they'd have just cooled their jets and sort of handled this differently and not be so concerned about the currents piece.
Yeah,
that's what I would wish that would have happened.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
I think it could have been a very
because you are very talented, and they could have used that to their advantage to say, look, this is what happens when people are given opportunity and when people have opportunity to move and grow and develop, that they can become progressive people.
Totally. So I think in my personal political analysis and looking at the Segarra administration and where it was at the time, they have faced so much.
Yes. Well,
right,
yeah.
Right. And a lot of it had actually none of it really had anything to do with the mayor, but was really tender at the time. I understand that. I don't blame the mayor or the administration for them, taking on a knee jerk reaction that they did, but also every reporter or particularly the current reporter who first broke the story, when talking to her, she said that, hey, I called them just to see what they thought about it. They had a perfect opportunity to say, hey, we're going to stand by our person. This is why we did this, because, so here's the fun part about it. The appointment happened, or the day that I would have started work would have been just before the Thanksgiving holiday. So slow news week, great opportunity if you're thinking politically to put out a feel-good story that extends the mayor and that administration to communities that they had not touched.
Yeah.
Instead, they set themselves up for a loss a year later.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any coincidences, particularly in politics. It's all science, right? It's all numbers, all numbers in perception. So if people perceive you as being hard on someone who reflects what a lot of people's lived experience is, actually, I say a lot, just being generous because I don't have actual numbers, but we know there's more people in Hartford, more people in New Haven, more people in Bridgeport, more people in Waterbury who have been impacted by the criminal justice system than not. Negatively impacted.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So, I think that was just a bad political calculation on their part. It happens. All good people over there or that were there.
So how did you recover? Like, what did it do for you mentally and emotionally?
I never had to recover. It was just it was time for a level up. So
I like that.
I had I had 1 to 2 hours of despair, right? And like literally like 1 to 2 hours where I was like, man, what is this? Why? Right? Like they called me. I never called them. Matter of fact, for 90 days straight, I was like, nah, I'm straight. And I kept turning them down, and I figured out every way to get them to turn me down. So I brought on 2 different people into the different interviews, and I said, if you can't hire this person, I don't want to work here, right? Or if you can't do this, I don't. And again, they came back. They continued to court. So in that couple of hours, if it was 2 hours, I despaired, and then, it broke. Like it's like when the cloud breaks and the storm breaks.
Yeah.
When the cloud moves, the storm breaks. It was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I ain't got time for this. I'm an organizer. And I looked out my window and I saw 3 different news trucks. So I said, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to use this attention, this energy, to speak to something that's much bigger than me.
Yep.
To speak to something that, like I didn't do the work to pass the ban-the-box provision or ordinance that was in place beforehand, or not a ton of it. That was Lorenzo Jones, that was Janice Fleming, that was Luis Cotto, my mentor. There were people who came before me who did the work to make sure that I could stand on this. So it was my responsibility to take it and stand on it, and that's what I did. So I never needed to recover. It was a level up. That was like the stepping stone. If you don't see it, you'll miss it. If you despair over it, you'll miss it. My salary went up after that. The price went up after that. And I'm very unapologetic about it. About how I was able to use that situation to my advantage, and I'm actually thankful for that it happened.
So you've got two things you're doing right now. You're running on
many things, but like two that we could talk about.
The two we're gonna fit into this hour.
Yeah.
You're running for state office.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Sure. So I'm currently running for state representative in the 4th district.
Where is that?
Hartford.
Okay.
And this district, I would say, is a microcosm of our nation, where 2 of the zip codes, for the most part, are impoverished. 1, though, is doing quite well. The way that I view my candidacy for this district and to represent my part of the city at the state legislature is, this is people versus politics. I've enjoyed, the last decade, having a political career and working through so many of the issues that affect us at the state legislature as an advocate, as a lobbyist, as someone who works on both electoral campaigns and issue campaigns.
So why do you want this gig?
So yeah,
because I'm like, why? Because it's grueling.
It totally is.
And you're a slave to it. I mean, you really are a slave. So why? Tell me.
Well, I won't be a slave to it. I think I've found the ability. Well, I don't want to speak too soon because I haven't won yet. But I think.
How's it looking?
It's looking great. Okay. It's looking great. I mean, this is gonna be all about who gets more voters to the polls. That's it, right? This isn't glitzy. There's no there's no fame that comes with it. It's thankless. It's gonna be all about who gets more people to the polls. But why I want to do it? Why do I want the opportunity to represent the folks in my district and the folks across the state who have the same lived experience as the people in my district? It's because I believe there aren't enough verdant, just true voices at the state legislature, and not just this state legislature, but any that actually reflect and represent what the people go through and experience every day. There are some. And so, that's why it's always, great to be here in New Haven, where my good friends like Gary Winfield and Robin Porter are.
My good friends, too.
Right? People who I work with very closely. And across the state. I mean, New Haven delegation is great as it is, but across the state, I think there's people who stand out, who could use me to assist them in the work that they're doing. And then at the same time, I believe that I can lead on some of the issues that need to be addressed at the state legislature. I don't think a good vote is enough. And what I mean by that is you could stick any. I mean, I'm in a party dominant district, meaning a Democrat always wins. So you can stick anybody in there, any empty suit, and there's been a couple. I'm working to fight that. I'm working to get someone, which is me, that does more than just follow what leadership says at the time. Because just because leadership says it doesn't mean that it's right, and that doesn't mean that I'm going there just to protest. Because it's a lot easier to run your mouth than to run a government, and that is a difficult task.
As we see on the national level.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to run your mouth than to run the government. But at the same time, I think there has to be not only a voice of reason, but a leveling voice that actually speaks to exactly, not synthesize, but exactly what the people are saying, what the people are feeling, what they're experiencing, what it means when there are cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, what that looks like, how that feels when you're denying someone an increase in minimum wage, what that means to their home, to their household, knowing that our current minimum is just not enough to raise a family on.
Right.
So
and that's real. And no one is having that conversation. We just have this number that everybody wants to get to, like 15,
right,
for the minimum wage. But even with that, what does that do? It doesn't allow you the access and the freedom to sort of rent an apartment.
Nope. Nope. It's just the minimum, right? And that's what we're working towards, though. And I think people are having a conversation, but I think it gets drowned out by more powerful voices. And what I want to do, at least in our small legislature of 151 state representatives, is help balance those voices. And I don't mean balance it where we find a place in the middle to compromise or meet, but I mean, if the scales are tipped one way, I want to weigh all the way the next way, right? Like I want to go all the way onto the other side so that we can actually get to a place that works.
Okay. So tell me about hashtag Cut 50.
I don't know anything about it.
What is that? Why is it on here?
I wonder.
National organization.
Oh, you know what? That's we're a week
oh, no,
ahead.
That's,
we're a week ahead.
We're
a week ahead. I'm gonna call Lewis up. Let me text Lewis and ask him.
Tell
about
him to
that
make sure you tell me about that.
Lewis, let's talk about the hashtag.
I want to hear about that.
I think the other thing outside of my candidacy that both you and Jeff really wanted to touch on is unlock the vote.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Unlock the vote. What does that mean?
Well,
I know what it means.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So I was gonna say, as you know,
for the listening audience.
Yeah, we can play this game and pretend that you don't know everything that I'm about to talk about and you don't have the facts already. But what unlock the vote means in this context is here in Connecticut, we are the only state in New England where persons that are currently serving terms of parole cannot vote. And that's where it is specifically right now, right? Because my goal in starting up the campaign was to address I don't want to look at it as incrementalism, but attack the piece that's most easily accessible to us, and the thing that we could advance the quickest. So getting people on parole the right to vote in this state is, to me, tantamount to getting people access to their citizenship, right? And so I don't believe, and I think the facts will bear out, that you're not a full citizen without the democratic right to vote. If you're paying taxes, so the old Patrick Henry, no taxation without representation. If you're paying taxes, and going back to what we were talking about by these unrealistic stipulations that are presented to people who are released from prison about getting work in 30, 60, 90 days, and you're put on an ankle monitor, and you're put through all these different things that don't actually aid you in getting a job. And then on top of that, you get the job. You got to pay into taxes. You got to find a place to live, but you can't be or have a say in who represents you. So the cycle continues, because if you're a parolee in my district, right, that I'm running for right now, and this is not why I did it, but if you, just to say you're a parolee and I'm talking about my experience on parole, let's just say, if I'm doing a public talk somewhere and I'm talking to voters, and you then say, hey, I know exactly what that's like. I'm going through that right now. You need someone to represent you. You don't need the status quo person who's just a member of the Democratic Town Committee that's trying to make a name for themselves, right? You actually want and need someone who has had your experience. So without having the ability to vote while on parole, you don't get that opportunity. You also don't get the opportunity to properly reintegrate into society, because you're treated as a second-class citizen.
Yes.
Right?
So how are you being received with this message?
Are
people listening?
It depends. We drafted a bill at the top of the year. I drafted a bill at the top of the year, ran it through the legislature, made it through committee, got onto the House floor. It did not get called up on the House floor. This was, leadership decided that it wasn't the time for it, which meant that they had to provide political cover for weaker Democrats. So were people listening? I say, yeah. Were they listening loud enough to push on leadership to move them to do things that may be unpopular but are right? Maybe not enough. The governor, and let me just give credit first and foremost to members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. I think this is an issue that they really stepped up on and provided some strength and credibility to. But also members of the Progressive Caucus. Josh Elliott was the first person to sign on as a sponsor without me asking. I didn't ask. He found it. He did the research and saw my bill and said, hey, how can I be helpful in this, right? And so through my vote count in the House, we had the numbers. But I think, again, leadership wanted to protect some folks in this year and so you got to be strategic. It is definitely chess, not checkers. And hope is not a strategy.
No.
So coming into the session and saying, I hope that we pass this, that was never a thing. My thing was, we'll work to pass it. If we don't pass it this year, we'll keep going. So while I understand that there's one rule book that the leadership has to play by and the legislature has to play by, I play by another. And to fully round out and answer the question is, we weren't fully heard in the legislature this year. So as we do as organizers within the phases of power, you do something once and then you just keep on doing it. So throughout this summer and into the fall, we've been running a voter registration drive. We've been collecting surveys. We've been popping up anywhere we can. We started a series with the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center to directly educate people on what felony disenfranchisement is and why it's wrong. Right, like where it starts, the history.
See, I was going to ask you that.
Of slavery.
Yes, because I think people need to understand that component.
Yes.
So that it doesn't feel like, so they don't understand that it didn't just drop on them out of nowhere. That this is, step by step, systematic thing.
Well, if people I think that component, the legacy of slavery, is the component. If people apply that frame and that lens to a lot of what we look at, particularly in our legal and criminal justice systems, you'd get a lot more clarity on what's being done today, and you'd have better strategy on how to fix it tomorrow.
Yes.
Right. And so I think
that's been missing in the conversation.
Totally.
Up until before civil rights, like somehow or other, that whole slavery piece just got pushed back because people didn't want to, white folks was tired of hearing about what their role was. Who
cares
in
about
slavery,
what white folks are tired
and black
of hearing?
folks were ashamed of it.
Yes. And so and black folks were also ashamed and tired of hearing about it because in our bootstrapping society, as we like to put it, I don't know. They can see you. Yeah, they can see you. The eye roll was really important. The eye roll was really important, and this is. I think one thing that we don't do in a clear enough, with a clear enough analysis is look at the issue of black, white, and particularly white supremacy as what it actually is, right? It's not a tool like we call racism. It's structural, and it's the house that you live in. It's the building that you work at.
It's so structural that white folks don't even know that they are participating in it.
Exactly.
Because they've been participating in it so long, and it's so generational that, they think if you say something to them, they are oppressed.
Right. And take all that, and then everything that you just said and say is so structural that black folks don't even know that they're participating in it, or other people, because the thing that the way that I differentiate racism and white supremacy is, I don't think that you have to be white to be a white supremacist, right? I think that there is so much.
I know exactly what you mean.
Right? There's so much of what we do to uphold white supremacy as black people, as brown people,
particularly around respectability politics.
Yes. So,
if I wear a suit and tie, somehow or other, I will not.
I'm absolved.
Yes,
I'm absolved. I've whitened a little bit.
And so therefore, I won't be suspect.
Yeah. There's a motivational speaker that I listen to, and I won't name his name, but some of his philosophies are dated. And I listen. I mean, it's dated because I listen to his old stuff. But there's one thing that sticks out to me, and I always say, "Man, I wish you would take this out." But it's to dress like a prospect and not a suspect, right? And although it sounds really good, right? It sounds good. It sounds like something that we.
But they only say that to us. Like they don't. It is never said to anybody else.
And
ever.
What we have to understand, and when we're talking about the us, the large us, black and brown folks, oppressed folks, what we have to understand is that is our power.
Yeah.
So culture always moves quicker than policy. So when everyone is screaming, pull your pants up, cut your hair, no tattoos, and institutions has been doing it for years, right? Where we know in the military, like I remember as a kid watching Biloxi Blues and, Charlie Sheen or whoever it was in the movie gets a tattoo in his hand, he gets court-martialed, kicked out. Now, right, soldiers have tattoos and they have dreads and you can work wherever you want with tattoos and dreads and whatever else and with your pants sagging, right? Not saying that you should, but if you choose, our power is in culture. Our power is letting, allowing, Lil Uzi Vert to lead as much as, any political leader, because Lil Uzi Vert knows culture much more genuinely than Cory Booker might.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not a slight on either one of them, because I know that Cory Booker knows policy, whether I agree with it or not, more genuinely than Little Uzi Vert does. So there's a meeting there where we have to allow our powers to be our power, and not bow to respectability politics.
Oh. Good morning. If you just tuned in, I'm BABZ RAWLS-IVY. This is Criminal Justice Insider with BABZ RAWLS-IVY and Jeff Grant. Jeff's not here today.
Jeff.
He'll be back. Our guest today is Kennard Ray of Connecticut's Unlock the Vote and candidate for Connecticut State Representative in District 4. And so we're having a rich conversation here on 103.5 WNHH, live streaming on the New Haven Independent, and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And it's happily sponsored by the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, more now than ever. Thank you. So we're having this great conversation about what do you think the future of criminal justice is? I mean, I always believe that we have a short window for topics of the day. Today is criminal justice.
Right.
Today is criminal justice. Last week it was Me Too.
Right.
Next week it'll be, do you know what I mean? Like when I say short window, I mean we'll have this conversation for a year.
I totally agree.
And then we'll move on to whatever the other egregious thing is.
Right.
And it'll rotate out. We'll go back to trafficking of children and humans.
Yep.
We'll go back to the abortion issue. We'll go back. Everything will be cyclical. But this criminal justice piece, considering that, Ava DuVernay's film, the 13th, has helped us understand historically how we got here. There's some other films that are coming around that are sort of saying, let's look at this from a different lens. Where do you think we are going? What would you like to see happen on the criminal justice field?
I don't know where we're going. And
that's an honest answer.
Yeah,
because I don't know where we're going either.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going, and I don't pretend to call myself an expert in criminal justice issues. Although some people try or whatever, and I'll just.
Well, you know more than most.
Yeah, but I'll be very clear that my entree into politics was not criminal justice. It just happened to crop up in 2013. That my lived experience got brought to the fore, so I had to speak about it.
And I feel you, because I'm always like my history is not criminal justice either.
Yeah.
But I just happened into it because I committed a crime and went to federal prison, and boom, I'm no expert either. But
yeah. And so, the reason why I put that out there, that disclaimer, I would say, is because I was already working in politics. I was already had an agenda for social and economic justice that I think is the rising tide or the lowering tide that either floats all boats or crushes them. And I believe the future criminal justice is about the same as what it is now, where I say I don't know for sure, but if you want to go on my belief, it is what it is. It's going to be what it is now, unless we make some dramatic shifts.
Yeah.
So what it is right now is, you know, a number of large foundations or well-endowed foundations, people with a lot of money who can play whatever side that they want to play on any particular issue. As you said, they pick issues at different times to focus on. Issues that play well in the press, issues that, you know, test well in focus groups, issues that can sell some books, issues that can get some films, some conversations started, right? These documentaries that we talk about and that we've been watching over the last, you know, 5 years, because I think we've had during the Obama era, you know, that created a ton of space, more space than's ever been created to talk about the disparity between black folks and white folks.
Yes.
Or brown folks and white folks in prisons, and you know, just how stark it is. But I think in talking to those disparities, not everyone watched 13th. Not everyone watched or read. Not everyone watched The House That I Live In. Not everyone read Michelle Alexander's book. And I think because of that, because this is not stuff that's taught fundamentally at kindergarten, right? Like, this is not the stuff that we're teaching people in their cribs and saying that we're going to be committed to this work indefinitely. That this is a piece of the legacy of slavery that we want to undress.
Do you think we need to be doing that?
Absolutely. So I'm saying I don't know, and I'm unsure of what's happening in the future.
Well, we cannot continue to operate in ignorance.
But we cannot continue to operate in ignorance, and until this is a part of our core competency or competencies, this issue and many others, you know, because I don't think kids should be in school rehashing and relitigating lies, or they're not even litigating them, right? Like the song in 1492. No one should be singing that, because Columbus didn't sail the ocean blue, and he didn't sail until he found the land for me and you. Actually, what he did was go to the wrong place. He went to the wrong place and then lied about it, right? Like lied to his bosses about it, lied to the people who were there about it, called them the wrong name. And so that if that is our legacy, is that if that's what we're teaching people in school at a fundamental level, in your most formative years, you grow up into what we have now, and that'll continue, I believe, unless we start reaching into places that allow us to form our ideas in a more truthful way. Yeah.
Are you hopeful about the education system providing some of that? I mean, it seems to be some blowback and pushback on at least trying to curtail some of this revisionist history.
Hope's not a strategy. So I think
that is true.
I think that
it is not.
There needs to be strategy to make that a reality. To make all the things that I'm talking about a reality. Somebody has to, and you know, maybe that somebody's me, maybe that somebody's you, but I think people have to dedicate their time, whatever time that it is, to creating a strategy and putting the strategy into action to make sure that the issue, the ideas of, you know, shifting the education system around from great stories to actual history, or and you know, I don't know if we even want to call history, but to things that are more on par with what we now know happened in the past, as opposed to how we wanted it to happen.
We had James Werther on. You know, he wrote the book Locking Up Our Own.
Right.
And how black folks were a part of, you know, that
96.
whole, yes,
yeah,
locking up our folks. And I understand that, because, you know, I was here in New Haven, and, you know, I have a brother and a half brother who were largely kingpins in the game.
Right.
And I just remember communities just sort of wanting the violence and the drug dealing to stop by any means necessary. They could not have seen or understood what that would have looked like 20 years out, locking up our kids for 20 years.
Right.
They just wanted this. They just wanted it to stop in their neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's a troubling. I mean, it's a hopeful read. It's a troubling read because, you know, it just sort of puts us squarely in the conversation in ways that we've not owned. I think fully our part in, and it's not all our. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say we gotta put that on our shoulders solely.
Right.
No.
Right.
But
we have to shoulder some of the.
But we have to shoulder some of that responsibility and burden.
Totally.
On how our communities got this way.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So I think in looking at that and looking at Werther's perspective, there's no doubt that those are truths. You know, that Black folk, brown folk contributed to what we now call the mass incarceration, right? To feeding the prison complex, right? To feeding that industry. I also believe, though, that again, white supremacy is so pervasive.
Yes.
That you'll be doing some stuff, right? Not really understanding why you're doing it. And so if your only options, if what's presented to you day after day is the solution, right? The advertised solution to solving your problems is a block watch, more cameras, more police, to over-policing your community. And there may be those people in the community that are saying, no, we have a better way. Fund us, right? Like, help us, resource us. I'm a local social worker. Help us, fund us. I'm a child care worker. I'm a salt of the earth pastor who walks the streets. Whatever these positions are, we know that these positions go unresourced when they're most needed. Yeah. We also know, and
they're always the first things to be cut when there's budgetary crisis.
Exactly. We also know that, you know, a lot of the stories, the way that they're reported and the way that the messaging goes out, lends a skew towards
yes.
Right. Like, and so
because they have to keep the narrative going.
Right.
That we are less than.
Exactly. So what bleeds leads, even if the truth of it is not all that bloody. The case in point, and I don't want to mess up the numbers, so I won't give exact numbers, but NPR did a story last week about how the number of school-related incidences of gun violence is so overreported, so right, like the numbers.
You would think there's a shootout, OK Corral, in every school,
every day, right? But you know, there are incidences within this report that they've reported on where there was a call of a suspected gun, right? You find out there was never a gun, but that's marked down as an incidence of gun violence. So I think human error plays a large part, but also you know, just straight up human folly. Yeah. Where we right, like when we're made a subject to go against, when brown people, when black people, where other oppressed people are made the subject, and then that story or that narrative is spun. I'm not saying an individual reporter is doing a bad thing. I'm saying the system that they report in is a bad thing.
Yeah. Because the headlines are, if you make the headlines catchy and you're used to seeing people in a particular light, then you win.
Right.
You've done what you set out to do.
Yeah.
You're not going to change it. You're not interested in changing the title to suit the truth.
Why would you? It's the Bow Wow challenge, right? So Bow Wow, you know,
the rapper.
Yeah. If that's what you want to call him, tweets out a photo that he's on a private plane. And, right. And so the truth is not as fun or sexy as the reality, but when the reality is revealed, then we see our errors, we see our faults, and we see how. And
where was he really? He wasn't.
He was on a commercial flight. You know, there was no Mercedes on the tarmac or anything like that. He wasn't driven to his private flight or whatever. But I think that's a lot of what we need to do, or what needs to be done, is peeling back the layers and levels and revealing truths.
Yes.
As opposed to continuing on this continue the masquerade of working under false pretense.
Wow. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure is all mine.
To come back.
I'm
enjoyed
ready.
this.
I'm ready.
This
Where's
is
Jeff?
good. Jeff will be back. We'll be back. We'll have you on again. This has been good. I enjoyed talking to Kennard Ray of Connecticut's Unlock the Vote and candidate for the Connecticut State Representative in District 4. Good luck.
Thank you.
I
really
vote for
appreciate
you.
it. I
would vote for you.
You got some time?
No, I'm not moving to Hartford. I worked in Hartford. I love Hartford. Not moving to Hartford.
Okay.
But I know people in Hartford, and I certainly will get out the word for you.
Call them, New Haven folks that are listening right now.
And you seem very relaxed to be a candidate.
Yeah, I mean, so and I'll drop this just at the end. I've run a ton of campaigns. I've managed some great campaigns. Worked with incredible candidates. I've got my chops up, so I have a lot of respect for the craft. I know that it's not easy, but
are you a good candidate? I mean, are you trying to run your own campaign? Did they tell you? Okay, Kennard, you have to go sit down. You have to be the kid, because this is what they told me when I ran.
Yeah.
You cannot be the manager and the candidate. You have to be the candidate and sit down. We got this.
So
is it hard for you? Yeah, I think so.
Can't talk about everything on the radio. This is one thing that I've said so much already. We're gonna leave the inside to the inside, and we'll see on November 7th how it all turns out. November 6th, again, to everyone listening in New Haven, not because I'm running, but because people are going to be running all across the state. Make sure you get out and vote. Yes. And vote your values, not just by party, but vote for the folks who will fight for your interests. And if you are in New Haven or anywhere else under my voice, if you can hear me, call your folks. Call your cousin in Hartford. That's and say, right. This boy, I think his name is Kennard, is running for office. He's been in prison. He had his whole record on the show. And he did time, and he's been doing good work. He's been fighting for minimum wage, girl. He raised it up a few times and paid sick leave and all these different things that we talk about that's sexy in the news now. He's been doing it for a while, so vote for that man. All right. That's a good thing. Thank y'all for tuning in to Criminal Justice Insider with BABZ, RAWLS-IVY, and Jeff Grant. We are back from our summer break. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, now more than ever, for their sponsorship of this show. And we'll be back again with Criminal Justice Insider with Jeff Grant, BABZ, RAWLS-IVY. I'll see y'all soon. Thank you. Thank you.